Hey everyone, welcome to iCommunicate. If you've ever struggled with holding people accountable, coaching, and difficult conversations, you're in the right place. iCommunicate provides fresh perspectives and actionable insights to coach leaders, teams, and individuals. Welcome to iCommunicate. I am your host, Mark Altman, founder and CEO of MindsetGo. And we are going to talk in this episode of iCommunicate about how to inspire action. And what's fascinating to me about the word inspire, and before I get into this, I need to welcome my partner in crime here, producer Mike Kamali. So, Mike, thanks for being with us as always.
Great to be back.
So, we're talking about how to inspire action. And I thought a lot about what that word means, inspire. And what's interesting about the word is I think that word feels really big for people. Like, how inspiring people, the responsibility that goes with inspiring people. And it is a pretty big responsibility. And I want to ask our listeners or our watchers, as it may be, to reflect for a minute. Do you believe in your lifetime you have inspired somebody? It could be a peer, it could be a team member, it could be a child, it could be anybody. Have you actually inspired someone? Because I don't even know all our listeners, and I would bet a lot of money, and I'm a really bad bettor, and I'd bet a lot of money that you have. Because inspiring isn't always intentional, right? It's not like you sit there one day and go, you know what I'm going to do, Mike? I'm going to try to inspire you today. That's not really how it plays out. And inspiration can come in so many forms. And the question is, do you see that as part of your role as a leader? Like, is part of your role to inspire? I absolutely do. I mean, it's interesting. And I'm going to give two examples here. Anybody who knows me really well knows that I can be tough on people. Like, I push people hard. But if you know me really well, you know it's done out of love and nurture, not to hurt you, right? And so with Mike, as an example, Mike's so great at seeing feedback as a gift that he embraces that. Like, he embraces being pushed. My son Cole, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago at dinner where I was pretty tough on him. And one of the things that was interesting about that conversation is he was open to it in the conversation, but like literally yesterday, like 2 weeks after the conversation, out of nowhere, he sent me a text and he said, "Hey, Dad, keep pushing me personally and professionally. I need it. I want it. I value it. I don't want you to think I'll ever resent you for it or frustrated with you." Right? So he may not have been thinking about that in the moment. And he texted me a few weeks later. And why is that important in that part of the story? Because one of the things that are tough for parents and leaders is you don't often get instant gratification, right? When you are coaching someone and when you're mentoring and supporting someone, they may not in the moment want to let you know that you reached them. They may not want to let you know in the moment that you had an impact on them. And just because they're not letting you know doesn't mean you didn't. And it also doesn't mean they won't tell you eventually, but they just might not want to admit it in the moment. And I just think that being a leader is embracing the responsibility of you are shaping people's lives. You are shaping their confidence. You're shaping their mindset. It's not that you have the sole impact on it, and you are shaping it, right? It's funny, I've complimented Mike a few times about seeing feedback as a gift. And I was talking to someone this morning, and they made the funniest comment about the expression seeing feedback as a gift. I'll never forget it. So this is a CEO of a company we've been working with for a while, and he was telling me that one of his executives on the leadership team just came back from a client meeting, a difficult client meeting, and he's telling me the story. And he says to his leader, he says, "So how'd the meeting go?" And he said, "quote unquote, I was showered with gifts." And I thought, that's freaking hilarious, right? Because feedback as a gift, that's what he meant. Like, he was showered with constructive feedback, but he said I was showered with gifts. So, look, As I progress through the show today, how to inspire action, really take some time as you're listening to reflect on how you inspire people. Do you recognize opportunities to inspire people? And inspiration can come in many forms. It can come with inspiring people to think differently. It could be inspiring people to act differently. It could be inspiring people to communicate differently. And I got to tell you, don't get me wrong. I am a very, well, maybe I'm overstating this. I can be a very complex entrepreneur. And why I say that is because the truth is, depending on which day and which hour you catch me, 50% of my personality is I want to make a ton of money. I want to grow this company and scale it nationally. And the other 50% of me, I love to work so much, I'd probably do it for nothing because that's how much I enjoy inspiring people. And you can't quantify. You know, I had a guy I was coaching earlier this week. This is a true story. Now, this is a guy who has had a very difficult upbringing, very difficult life, um, grew up without a father, and actually not only grew up without a father, I would actually, well, this is the truth. Not only did he grow up without a father, he actually, at a very young age, saw his father abuse his mother in front of him. Okay, so imagine the imprint that leaves, right? It's traumatic. I mean, there's no other way to say it. So this is a guy that has grown up without a template. Um, and as you would imagine, one of the things that manifests, not in every situation, but in some situations, is he's not great at managing his emotions, right? In this particular person in question, um, becomes very impatient, intolerant of people. So anyway, I've just started coaching this guy the last couple of months. So we have a meeting with me and his two other executives on the team. And we meet for a full day. And the guy says to me, I'm waiting for my Uber to leave. And the guy looks at me and starts to tear up and he says, Mark, I've never had anybody advocate for me the way you advocated for me in that session. And I want to be clear to our listeners. This is not me telling this story so you can be like, look how great Mark is. That's not why I'm telling the story. I'm telling the story because when you inspire people, he was inspired because he was advocated for. He felt heard. He felt represented. He felt understood. So who knows now what he does differently? Because we had this discussion with these two other executives. He felt like they have a better understanding on where he comes from and why he comes from it. And I'm not saying about his childhood. I don't mean that, but just the way why he approaches things certain ways, why he communicates certain ways. And I think that so if he felt advocated for, we'll find out moving forward if he was inspired in the actions he takes from that. But make no mistake, whether it's inspiring people's thoughts, actions, communication approach, how they deal with conflict, there's opportunities to inspire people every day. And by the way, one of the biggest ways you can inspire people is showing belief in them. Look, I'm going to be really candid. And Mike doesn't even know I'm going to say this. As a young guy, like I'm learning about what Mike's capabilities are. Like, I don't know. He doesn't even know all his capabilities. He's figuring it out. He doesn't know. He's not supposed to know. Right? So there are times in Mike's few months here where he's given something to do. I don't know if he's going to be successful at it. I don't know if deep down in my heart, if you hooked me up to a lie detector test, I would say to myself, oh, I believe Mike's going to thrive at that. I don't know if I would actually say that, but you know what? I'm not going to let him know that because right now, I want Mike to know I have the confidence in him. I want Mike to know, and I don't want you to misunderstand as a listener, this isn't about being inauthentic. And I think, look, if I was really sure Mike wasn't going to be good at it, I wouldn't say, Mike, I think you're going to be great. Like, I wouldn't do that. That's inauthentic. And I have enough confidence in who Mike is, his motives, his intentions, his mindset, his drive, his desire to be good at what he does. That I believe in. So even if there's aspects of certain parts of his job where I don't really know how successful he's going to be, I'm going to show belief in him. Because if Mike feels that his boss, a mentor, someone like that believes in him, he's likely, just as a human, to put more effort into it, to put more thought process into it. Right? Like, is that fair, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair. And I think I've taken on a few tasks, the podcast being one of them,
Yeah,
that I've never done before.
that's right.
I was nervous about it, and now it feels really comfortable and it feels really good.
And I think the podcast is an example because, one of the things about being a good coach is truly understanding when you delegate something to someone, what level of experience do they have? What level of knowledge do they have? I mean, I can sit there and say to Mike, hey, I need you to do the podcast. I need you to produce the podcast. Hell, I made him build an entire process for the podcast. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Right. So I can do that. The reality is, and here's the danger when you delegate and coach with people, right? So Mike struggled in the beginning. Now, this premise I've talked about on the show before about looking inward before blaming outward, it would have been so easy to me to go, oh, well, okay, I guess he's not good at that. Like, I don't know why I ever believed it. I'm like, I guess, but wait a minute. And Mike can attest to this. But then we had a conversation. I was like, wait a minute, Mike, what experience do you have with this? Like, have you done that before? And then I didn't realize to do that on the first time. I had a blind spot around that. The first time around, I what we call dumpagated, not delegated. So, and because he stuck with it, because I stuck with it, because I stuck with him and was committed to it, it ended up being a great result. And that's just the beginning. We haven't even tipped the iceberg with what we're going to do with this podcast. And what Mike doesn't realize is that I did before Mike came along, I had done, 150 episodes of iCommunicate. And then I took a 2-year hiatus. And not because I didn't love it. It's because I was like, I convinced myself I don't have time for that. Just such BS. Like, I don't have time for that, which means it wasn't a priority for me. So because Mike has quarterbacked this process, because Mike has made it easier for me, he's inspired me to get back on the horse and do this podcast to consistently again. And why that's important is because one of the biggest myths of inspiration is that you can't inspire upward. That's ludicrous. Kids inspire their parents all the time. Team members inspire their bosses all the time. And frankly, all three of my kids on multiple occasions have inspired me to be a better father. So let's dispel the myth of inspiration has to be a downward act. Like that's just flat out not true. So enough about that. So look, I had someone ask me earlier today, literally today, they said to me, Mark, what's your methodology? What's the MindsetGo methodology? And I kind of laughed because I find the word methodology to be a little fluffy. I know what it means, but I find the word methodology to be fluffy. And here's how I actually answered the question. I said, here's what I can tell you. I'm going to tell you that our methodology, when it comes to coaching and inspiring, is coaching people to be what we call an emotionally agile communicator, which is a blend of the ability to manage yourself, be conversationally agile, and be emotionally agile. Now, the reason I bring that up is because no matter who I interact with in this lifetime, I am inherently either intentionally or unintentionally trying to help them be more emotionally agile communicators when I'm given opportunities to support them. When I think of methodology, and I think of what coaching really is, right? I think of I am so confident, and this confidence doesn't come from arrogance or conceit. This confidence comes from 12 years of getting feedback from clients telling me that they feel like they truly understand and know how to apply what coaching truly is. In our methodology around coaching, I think we teach it. I think we inspire people to apply it. I think we help people get comfortable and confident to execute it. I would say we do that as well as anybody. And I would go up against any company or any consultant in that specific area. We've figured something out. We really have. And what you're going to hear on our next episode is something we call That's a Wrap, which is an example. But on this episode, I want to really outline for you the difference between what people call a one-on-one and coaching. And a one-on-one, and let me just preface my comment by saying, I run into situations on a regular basis where there's three scenarios I typically run into. Number one, there is very little interaction between a boss and a team member because they're disconnected, they're too busy, very little interaction. Scenario number two is I hear, oh, we don't do one-on-ones, but we communicate every day. Like we're talking all the time. We don't really need to do one-on-ones. So there is interaction. It's reactive. It's not planned or organized, but it's usually to put out fires, solve problems. That's that interaction. And then the third interaction is a actual planned, scheduled, recurring one-on-one meeting. Now, as I share this and we get through the rest of this episode, if you are, despite what I'm about to say over the next 20 minutes or so, if you are having a one-on-one, I'm proud of you because even if it's not what I would define as coaching, it's still something. And you should be proud of dedicating allocated time to support your team member. So make no mistake, this is not a judgment. If you're doing that, it's a lot better than most. And as far as the frequency of it, I know what I would like your frequency to be, and I'm more concerned with the consistency of your one-on-ones as opposed to meeting someone else's expectations. In other words, let me be clear. I'd rather you not pressure yourself to meet with them every week and then have to break those appointments than I'd rather you meet with them every 2 or 3 weeks and consistently do that so people know what to expect. So we have no interaction. I talk to them every day anyway, and we have one-on-ones. And in scenario 2 or 3, there's a hint here, you have choices. So scenario 2 or 3, it's reactive. Because what I understand a typical one-on-one to be is, hey, so Mike, what's keeping you up at night? What are some struggles you're running into? In the one-on-one format is really more about day-to-day overview. What do I need to catch you up on? What do you need to catch me up on? That's the format of a typical one-on-one. And that's not coaching, right? That is problem solving. That is communicating. That is potentially collaborating. It's not coaching. And so what we're going to do over the next 15, 20 minutes is we're going to walk through 4 foundational pieces of a coaching session. What would be different? And by the way, just so everybody has this template for this, people say to me, well, but are you saying that we should only do coaching and not one-on-ones? No. I'm saying that if you said to me, if you had the time, depending on how many people you manage, there's a lot of variables here, right? I'm saying to you that if it was a perfect world, you would have either a weekly one-on-one, perhaps of 30 minutes, or you would have an every other week one-on-one. And if it was every other week, one of your meetings every month would be a one-on-one and one would be a coaching session. And if it was every week, 3 of your meetings every month would be a one-on-one and one would maybe be a 1-hour coaching session. That's what I'm proposing as a cadence. So I'm not saying get rid of one-on-ones altogether. I'm saying, how do we incorporate actually coaching people into the plan? Now, I'm going to give you a scenario I want you to think about. Think about a performance review. Now, the amount of hours of time, the billions of dollars companies spend on this process over the course of the year. And what's fascinating to me about it is you could do a performance review, and then what? Yay, we've given feedback on what you did well and what you didn't do well and what you need to improve. And my thing is, at the end of a performance review, what happens next? I mean, you're seeing companies finally, and a lot of the companies we consult for, we built this process for them. They're getting out of the annual performance review process because annual feedback on performance, that doesn't sound very logical. Plus, if I'm giving you annual feedback, the problem there is, I, I, I mean, I can't even remember what Mike did last week, let alone 6 months ago. So how am I going to give feedback on the entire year when I haven't been documenting anything? I can't remember all the good and bad in the middle and whatever and so forth. So problem number one is, in a performance review, if it's annual and there's no follow-up, that feels like checking a box. If you're doing a performance review and there is a development area, let's say one. And guess what? I'm going to paint a picture here. The great news is both parties are aligned that that person needs to grow in that area. There's no defensiveness. There's no argument. Like Mike and I are like, yep, Mark, got to get better at that. Great. Okay. And in this scenario, let's even say that we come up with a plan. Great. Are we ever going to follow up on that plan? Are we ever going to check back in to see if he's actually doing anything different? Are we ever going to do progress checks and milestone checks? If that doesn't happen, don't you think that greatly impacts a person's ability to make progress? I said it on a recent podcast. If you ask your child to clean their room and you don't check to see if their room's clean, what's the likelihood they're going to actually clean their room? Unlikely. So, in a performance review situation, what's the ideal? In a perfect world, you would be doing quarterly check-ins on progress from the performance review. Where are we at? So what I'm talking about here is when you're coaching someone, what you're actually doing is developing them. And part of the benefit, and hopefully Mike sees this, I guess I should ask him. Part of the benefit, assuming he'll speak his truth here, but part of the benefit of working for MindsetGo and what we do for a living is you're going to learn a bunch of skills, whether you like it or not. You're going to be way more skilled. And hopefully Mike grows old with us. But either way, he's going to leave a hell of a lot more skilled than when he came in here because you can't help but develop. Like that's just the nature of what we do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, even in my short time here, it's been crazy all the new skills and abilities I've developed. My coaching and my ability to communicate have skyrocketed. And that in itself is already just going to help on so many levels.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's going to help with your girlfriend.
Yeah, most certainly.
Right? And so anyway, so you're developing people. Coaching is developing people. So what we're really saying here is, what effort are you making as a leader over the course of a year to develop people? If you are an executive and you have 5 direct reports and I'm your boss, guess what I'm going to ask you in your performance review? Who have you developed this year? Who in your team, who of your direct reports knows how to do something, knowledge, skill, behavior that they didn't know last year at this time that you can point to? And you know how many people would have crickets as an answer to that question and would not answer it? And you know what? It's a problem. It's a significant problem because I'm going to tell you right now, we've got a lot of people aging out of the workforce. And especially in all industries, but in blue collar industries, construction, lumber, electrical, people are aging out of the workforce. There's a new generation of people that you have to attract. If you're not developing people, if the people that are aging out of the workforce aren't developing people, then what are we going to do? How are we going to get that new workforce up to speed? And what's fascinating to me about this is when I think about succession planning, people talk about succession planning all the time. And you know what a lot of owners and executives word associate with the word succession planning? Who's going to succeed me? Yeah, guess what? That's really important. Good question. Legacy. Who's going to, don't get me wrong, that's hugely important. And you know what I say to them? Great question. We should talk about that. Can I ask you one more question? Who's going to succeed everybody else that's aging out of your company? Who's going to do that? You have people at your company that you've identified as high potentials, as emerging leaders. Are they skilled? Are they developed? And if they're not, how's that going to happen? Is anybody coaching here, or are we just doing one-on-ones? Or are we just having reactive conversations every day to problem solve? This is what I'm talking about. Like, you don't have time for coaching? Okay. So I guess you don't have time to develop people. And I guess you don't have time to replace your aging workforce. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to pay for that one way or the other. And wouldn't it be easier to develop and assess and identify high potentials and emerging leaders at your company and get them up to speed, mentored, supported, coached, than try to bring in someone from the outside and reinvent the wheel? I mean, you tell me. So I am absolutely stunned at the lack of coaching that goes on in almost every company I've interacted with, truthfully. And that's maybe is too much of an overstatement. How about 80% of the companies I interact with? Okay. And what's even more appalling is that when I ask them if they're actually developing people and to give me tangible examples of how, it's 90% of the time people don't have an answer. And again, even in the 80% of, or the 20% who are, it's really one-on-ones and not coaching. They're still not, in many cases, even doing the coaching. So hopefully I've whet your appetite here. So I said 4 things. So let's recap. Well, we haven't even discussed. So let's say, here are the 4 things, okay? So the first thing is that when you're coaching someone, what does coaching look like? Number 1, unequivocally, what's in the way? So if someone isn't delegating effectively, why? What's in the way? Is it that they don't trust the people they have delegated to? Is it that they have a belief system of, well, it would just be easier to do it myself? Is it they don't feel like they'd be an effective delegator and it would take too much time? But I just gave you 3 things that could be in the way. I often tell companies, if you want me, you want one of our facilitators at MindsetGo to come in and train your people how to delegate effectively, I tell them, I would say, the first thing I'm going to do because I could give you the toolbox of the century when it comes to delegation. And I'm going to say to you, the first thing I got to figure out is why they're not delegating right now. Because until we figure out the barrier that's in the way, they're not going to use the tools and strategies. We got to figure out that belief system and barrier that's in the way. So that's number 1. A coach, first thing is what's in the way. Second thing is SMART goals. What is the goal to measure progress? There has to be an incremental SMART goal. And if you're not familiar with the acronym SMART, the S stands for specific, the M stands for measurable, the A stands for achievable, the R stands for relevant to your success, and T stands for timely. So think about this. And this is where it gets really tough. If you are coaching someone so they can respond and not react and better manage their emotions, what would be the SMART goal for that? That's where it gets tough for people. And when I work with people, they're like, Mark, how do you set a SMART goal around emotion management? You absolutely can. And you know why? Because now, and we're not going to get too much in the weeds on this for this episode, but it's the difference between quantitative and qualitative goals, right? So if Mike doesn't have this issue, but if I was to say to Mike, hey, here's your SMART goal for responding and not reacting, an example would be, I want you to track. I want you to take 5 minutes at the end of every day and just log 5 minutes. Two things. One, how many opportunities did I have to respond, not react today? And how many times did I actually execute and respond and not react? And by the way, that's triggers, right? How many times was I triggered today where I was inclined to react, but I actually responded? So that would be an example of a SMART goal. Mike, I want your goal to be that each day you're going to log the results 5 minutes before you go home is the last thing you do. That's a SMART goal. Starting tomorrow, at the end of each day, 5 minutes, log the results. Mike, do you feel like you can achieve 5 minutes? He says yes. That's a SMART goal. So we have what's in the way, what's the SMART goal. Number 3 is the success template. What would you see and hear to know Mike's successful? Well, this one's pretty self-explanatory, right? The success template is a completed log. It's a completed journal showing the results. So how do I know Mike did a good job at it? Because in our next coaching session, he shows me the journal. That would be the success template. What would I see and hear to know he followed through? He did what we discussed. And the fourth thing is the plan. And in our next episode, that's a wrap. We're going to talk a lot about what's the plan. That's the theme of our next episode. And for now, to make you dangerous, right? What's the plan is, and this is the tricky part, and listen very carefully on this because it's tricky. You may be listening to me and saying, well, wait, we just came up with the plan. Mike's going to take 5 minutes. No, that's the action. That's not the plan. The plan is, I would say to Mike, all right, Mike, it sounds like we agree on what action needs to be taken. How will you remember? How will you remember to update that journal for the 5 minutes at the end of it? That's the plan. Will he put a reminder on his calendar? Will he use a sticky note? Will he put a wallpaper on his desktop? But you see, like that's different. The action is the log. The plan is how he'll remember to fill out the log. Because you know why? Because right now, Mike is not filling out a log at the last 5 minutes of every day. It's something new. It's a behavior change. We need a plan. So what's the difference between a one-on-one and a coaching? Here's the difference. The difference is you're coaching a skill, a behavior, an awareness. And to coach those things, you have to understand what the barrier in the way of them doing what you want them to do or what they want to do. There has to be a goal to strive for, right? There has to be a success template so we can actually know if he's successful in making progress. And there has to be a plan to integrate the action. Those are the 4 things. And look, one of the things that's interesting to me about coaching is if I have to start coaching Mike on something, well, I'm only scheduled right now, and I'm making this up to give an example. I'm only scheduled to have a one-on-one with him every 2 weeks and a coaching session every 2 weeks. So if I'm coaching him on something, especially if it's timely and important, so what's my follow-up? See you next month in 30 days? Well, I may need to adapt. Maybe I do like a 5 or 10 minute check-in each week leading up to our next coaching session to see if he's running into any difficulties, to see if he's having setbacks. So let's not be rigid about this. Like so often it's funny. People are like, yeah, all right, well, I don't have time for more meetings. So I'll just see you next month. Really? Because if you're trying to help people change habits and behaviors, do you think you could find 5 minutes just to check in and see if the person's had some wins and setbacks? Maybe it's not a full meeting. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's walking down the person's office, if available, and say, hey, Mike, by the way, how you doing with X? So I think that's a really important point. And remember, if you're doing a performance review, the time and energy that goes into that, and to not coach people after that, and to not have a plan, and not to set goals, and not to have a success template to know how they're progressing and being successful, well, why are we even doing the performance review? And by the way, I'll make an analogy for our listeners. Companies, and we do this, companies spend tons of money and time on culture assessments and employee engagement assessments. And I want to put performance reviews in that same bucket. Because if you're going to go through the exercise to do those things and not have effective follow-up after they're done, you're going to do more harm than good. And by the way, do your people want a performance review? Right? Because a lot of people don't want it. A lot of people do want it because it's a chance to find out how they're doing and gauge progress. And I'm just saying to you that if you're going to go through all the trouble on preparing and going through a performance review, and there's no plan or SMART goals or success template to see it through, save the trouble. Because unless that person, this is a great way to wrap up today. Unless that person, and this brings everything in this show full circle, is so inspired, right, that we have no goals, no plan, and Mike looks at me and goes, Mark, you don't even need goals. You don't even need a plan. Success template, overrated. As a matter of fact, I got barriers in the way, but man, you don't even know. I'm so disciplined. I'm so determined that you don't need any of those 4 things. I'll just do it. Well, guess what? For every one of those people, there's like thousands that aren't. So understand that there's not 0% chance, but unless someone is so disciplined, determined, and highly motivated, you don't have those 4 things, again, your likelihood of success goes down precipitously. That's a great word of the day, wouldn't you say, Mike?
Absolutely.
I think we got to props to that. Okay, so that's our show. And, final takeaway for this is just to reinforce for everybody, I want you to listen to these shows. And I'm wanting you to be inspired to take an action. Like, if I'm working with you and you listen to the show and said, boy, Mark, I am ready to do all those things moving forward. You know what I'm going to say to you? I'm skeptical because that's a lie. If you aren't doing those things at all or consistently, that's a lie. If you said to me, Mark, from come hell or high water, I'm inspired to uncover that barrier real problem in coaching moving forward, I'm fired up. That's an action. So as much as I'd like you to enjoy these episodes, I'm way more interested in you applying what you learned from these episodes. And to apply what you've learned, you've got to make it achievable. You've got to make it realistic that you can say, well, let me just start here. And by the way, you know what a great strategy to become a better leader and coach is? Listen to this episode repeatedly. Like every month, refresh. Oh, right. Yeah, I haven't been doing that. That'd be a hell of a strategy. So, thank you once again for joining us. For Mike Kamali, I am Mark Altman. We'll see you next time for iCommunicate, and that's a wrap.